So car insurance, what's it all about? Well, you typically get car insurance from an insurance company, and you can buy insurance plans in 6 months or 12-month coverage plans. I have a 6-month plan. I think most people tend to have 6-month plans, but you pay every 6 months and then you pay some dollar amount, and that gets you coverage, right? So what are the different types of coverage? So the main types of coverage you'll hear are, there's 3 of them, which are mandatory in most states. And those are bodily injury, property damage, uninsured or underinsured motorist. So first 2 cover the other person. So if you are in a car crash, you run a red light and you hit someone, and you're at fault. You need to be able to cover the other person's expenses because you messed up their car and probably caused them some bodily injury. So that's what bodily injury and property damage covers. The name of the game with insurance is actually covering the other person, except for with this one, which is a little bit different. These 2 are sort of like the big players when it comes to your insurance. You have like a coverage per person and a coverage in total. So some typical numbers might be you could get, let's say, $100,000 per person and $300,000 total in bodily injury coverage, right? So there are numbers that apply to each of these categories, and they're separate for each category. What this means is each person in the sort of other person's car, again, you're at fault here, so the person that was done unjust damage gets covered $100,000 in medical expenses per person, right? So that's a limit. If your bill, say someone's leg broke and they need to pay $50,000, they'd be fully covered in this plan. If for some reason their medical expenses for any single person in that car exceeded $100,000, your insurance would cover up to $100,000 of those charges. So there's 2 limits here, and whichever limit you hit first will be the one that applies. This is a per person limit. There's also a total limit, which is $300,000. One person's medical bill is $50K, right? One person's medical bill is $150K, and the other person's bill is also $50K. Your insurance would actually only cover, they would cover this person fully, because that's under $50,000. They cover this person fully because it's under $50,000. They'd only cover $100,000 of this person's insurance because it hit the per person limit. Now, imagine that there happened to be 4 people in the car, many cars hold up to 4 people, and they had $100,000 in medical costs each. Your insurance would actually only cover up to $300,000 because even though each person is below the per person total, in total, their expenses would exceed $300,000. So your insurance will only cover $300,000. This level of bodily injury coverage is actually considered pretty high. In California, actually, the required limit is you need to have at least $15,000 of coverage per person and $30,000 of coverage in total. So this is in California, the absolute requirement. But you can opt for more. That'll just mean that you pay more per 6 months or per 12 months in your premium. Property damage is very similar, but there's no concept of having like a per person and total limit. There's just one number, which is the total coverage for the other person's vehicle if you were the perpetrator of the accident. So in California, the required property damage coverage is $5K. I'm pretty sure it's not uncommon to see coverages up to like $30,000 or like $50,000. But this is the minimum requirement in California. So if you were to hit someone and their car was, I don't know, super expensive sports car and it was worth $100,000, right? If you have this plan, you're in luck because your insurance would cover up to $50,000 of those damages and you would be out for the other $50,000. If you had this plan, your insurance would only cover $5,000 of it. I mean, that's considering if the car was completely totaled and also brand new and had a value of $100,000. Many times you won't actually total their car and maybe you'll just like, hit their fender, in which case you might only be out like $3,000 or $4,000. So, if you're only planning on causing minor accidents, not that any of us plan to cause accidents, maybe you only want the minimum coverage, but you might want to consider the types of cars in your area and the maximum damage you might cause to one of these vehicles, and then choose a property damage coverage that's proportionate. And then finally, there's uninsured and underinsured motorist, but this one is actually to cover you. So there are 2 people in every accident. There's the person at fault and then the person that got hit. As I said before, these are in order to, if you were at fault, cover the other person. However, sometimes you're not the one at fault. Someone hits your car, and their insurance ideally would cover your medical expenses and your property damage. However, not everyone on the roads is insured. In California, actually 25% of people don't have auto insurance. If you're hit by someone who doesn't have insurance, they don't have insurance to cover your expenses, so who pays? I mean, legally, the other person is obligated to pay for your medical bills and pay for your property damage. They don't have insurance to cover it, so all of that comes out of their pocket. Now, getting that money out of their pockets is a whole other story. Oftentimes, that person won't have that kind of money. And second, they might just refuse to pay, and then you have to get into a whole legal battle. To avoid all this sort of process of extracting money from another person when they're at fault and don't have insurance, you can actually buy your own insurance to cover yourself, which is what uninsured and underinsured insurance is for. So based on my research, this covers your bodily injury in the case that someone that is uninsured or underinsured causes an accident and is at fault against you. Typically, people match their bodily injury coverage. So like whatever you would cover for someone else if you hit them, you also cover yourself for if someone uninsured hits you. So just for this example, you might opt for something like 100K per person and 300K total. In California, there's actually no required UIM insurance. So this is entirely optional. If you don't want to have it, you have to waive it in writing. There's probably easy ways to do that with whatever insurance provider that you choose. So these are the three main types of insurance. You might also hear things called full coverage or collision coverage. And these are optional augments to your insurance that you can purchase for additional cost. So you might be wondering, okay, so I'm covered if someone else hits me and causes bodily injury to me and my passengers or to my car, right? The other person's bodily injury and property damage insurance will cover damages to your car. Now, what if you were at fault and you want to also protect your own car and protect your own medical payments? So these are things to protect the other person, right? What about for you? So these are required because as someone driving on the road, you're required to sort of maintain the minimum insurance to cover anyone if you're ever at fault. If you are at fault and you want to cover yourself, that's sort of up to you, and I guess the state leaves that up to you. So these are not required by law. But the two main types of insurance here are comprehensive and collision. You might also hear the term full coverage, and full coverage is usually comprehensive and collision. So when someone buys a plan which has all the required insurances and also purchases for themselves comprehensive insurance and collision insurance, they might call that full coverage. But full coverage is not actually a formal term in any insurance plan document that you'll see. It's just used by insurance salespeople and people in everyday lingo. So comprehensive insurance is the lesser of the two. Comprehensive insurance covers things like a branch falling on your tree, collisions with non-moving objects. So if you ran into a light pole or maybe a barrier, that would fall under comprehensive insurance. This also covers theft and like window smashing. So if someone smashes your window or steals your entire car, that would be covered under comprehensive insurance. Now, I should note that it covers damage to the property and damage to the car and theft of the car. It doesn't cover anything actually inside the car. So if someone smashes your window and steals your laptop's not covered, but the repair for the window is covered. The way these numbers look is that you'll have a deductible, and that's the only number that's important for both these types of insurance. So your deductible might be, say, like for comprehensive, you might have a $300 deductible, right? Which means that if you ran into a branch and your car, if a branch fell on your car and you needed to replace the windshield, and that cost you $2,000, you would only pay out of pocket $300. So a lower deductible is better. Obviously, a lower deductible will be more expensive. So you can have up to a $0 deductible, which means that no matter what damage happens to your car under the comprehensive category, you would never pay out of pocket. You can also have higher deductibles up to like $2,000 or $3,000. But at some point, it becomes sort of economical to not go any higher with your deductible. I mean, if you had a window smashed and it only costs $500 to replace it, a $3,000 deductible is not going to cover you at all. But these tend to be very, very cheap. So you'll decide where on the spectrum you want to fall. Story with collision is the same. You'll have a deductible. You can choose between a $0 deductible up to like $2,000 or $3,000 deductible, maybe even higher depending on your insurance provider. And the collision coverage is for if you hit anything that's moving. So if you hit other cars, well, not everything that's moving. If you hit other cars. Comprehensive insurance also covers if you hit animals. That's the only moving thing as far as I know that comprehensive will cover. If you hit other cars, maybe you've hit people, I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that, but basically if you're in an accident with another car, your bodily injury and your property damage insurance will cover the other person's bodily injury and the other person's property damage. Your property will be covered by collision insurance if you have it, and based on your deductible that you've selected. I should note there's also one more category that I forgot. It's called medical payments. So if collision is for accidents where you're at fault and property damage covers the other person, collisions covers you. If you're at fault and bodily injury covers the other person, who covers your medical payments? Ideally, your own health insurance. But if you want a layer on top of that to protect yourself, you can buy what's called medical payments. insurance. So this also runs on a deductible system. You can have deductibles up to some amount or probably down to $0, and that'll just affect your premium. So this is for your own medical bills and for people in your car when you're at fault, okay? And these are the types of insurance. Hopefully that was helpful to you. I don't know everything. This is just what's off the top of my head. So I might have gotten some things wrong, and if I did, let me know down below.